All right. Welcome to everybody to Taking the Steps with the purpose of this book. We're going to start with the set aside prayer, which I don't know if Emily, do you have the version we've been doing? I'll put it in the chat this time and you can copy it for next time. Let me get that in there. There we go. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my unmanageability, my spiritual path in you, for an open mind and a new experience of myself, my unmanageability, my spiritual path, and especially you. Thanks for taking the steps with us. My name is David, and I'm a recovered alcoholic drug addict. And with me is,
I'm also David. I am a recovered alcoholic and drug addict. Good to see you guys.
so easy to ask questions later on. Just say David, and you'll be right. This is not a fellowship group or meeting. Instead, over 12 weeks, we're going to take the 12 steps of recovery together, following the precise, specific, clear cut directions in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because this is not a specific fellowship group, anyone interested in the program of recovery that's in the big book is welcome to take the steps with us. The goal is to take the steps out of the book, number one, but also number two, to learn how to quickly take somebody else through the steps. Some other information and ground rules. We're going to record this audio and we'll share it in the WhatsApp group and on the podcast we have. And the podcast is not a commercial enterprise. It's just a recording of us talking. If you're not in the WhatsApp group, please put your name and phone number, including your country code, in the chat, and we will add you. Please commit to being here every week. We got 12 steps to take. We got to be here every week to take them together. And please, if you can, be on camera with us. There's no attendee comment portion, but we will take questions. So put those questions in the Zoom chat. If we can't answer them as we go or at the end, we'll get back to you in the WhatsApp group. David and I, or some of our recovered peers, will also be able to help outside this study for anyone unclear. If you're just struggling with some concepts and things we bring up, we'll help you on the side. Just to be clear, David and I are not the official big book experts or gurus. We're just going to share our experience and our knowledge from our study of the book and the teachings of other people, right? People came before us and our peers in recovery today. Our dictionary person is Emily. Wave to the crowd. There she is. She's going to help us with key definitions along the way. And the resources that we refer to during the study as we take the steps, there's some worksheets, some documents. You can find all those things at the website I mentioned. It's www.purposeofthisbook.com. Can you put that in the chat too, Emily? And if you go to that website, purposeofthebook.com, and you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see a document called Taking the Steps. There's a Word version, there's a PDF version, they're identical. That's the format, the outline we're going to follow. David and I did this once before a couple of years ago, so we're largely going to follow the same content. We may make a couple adjustments along the fly, so we'll do an updated doc at the end of the study, but that's going to be 98, 99% the same as what we're going to be going through here. Okay? So we're taking these steps. We're doing this as a group. We are in this. This is not theoretical, guys. We're all going to do this work together so that we can go on to do the real work. And Emily is doing something here. Oh, thank you. Showing
Look
everybody.
at her.
Beautiful. Look at Emily. Technology. That's where you can download that summary doc. Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Em. So let's get right in. I think that's enough sort of pomp and circumstance. Today, we are talking about step one, right? We're going to make sure that you get a very clear understanding of step one, because in 12-step recovery, if we don't understand step one, if we don't have good comprehension of it, how are steps 2 through 12 going to make any sense? So what is step one? Right? This comes from page 58 of the book, 59 of the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Step one is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of words around this, and then we're going to get into the book. We're going to see what the book has to say about step one. If you're not familiar with this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, some of the language is quite old-fashioned. We're going to translate it into modern English to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about today, okay? So here's what we're going to expose to you in step one. We're going to help you understand the powerlessness that comes in two parts. There's a physical powerlessness and there's a mental powerlessness. And then really important after the dash, this concept of unmanageability. We're going to really make sure you understand this as well. And we also refer to the unmanageability as the spiritual malady, right? Or the spiritual illness. So with all that getting said, let's get into the book, right? Let's get into the problem and the solution and the practical program of action to get from the problem to the solution. So this is the most difficult part of the whole study. Although there's a lot of old gray hairs here. So you guys know what Roman numerals are. All you old people who know Roman numerals, we're looking for Roman numeral 28. It's in the chapter, The Doctor's Opinion. If you don't know Roman numerals, in the top left of the page numbers, it's X, X, V, I, M. If you can add that to the chat, that will probably help everybody. X, X, V, I. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to get there. Okay, so we're going to be diving in here. This chapter is called The Doctor's Opinion. It was written by this guy named Dr. William Duncan Silkworth for the book as it first came out in 1939. Okay, and why this doctor is writing here and why his opinion is so important and still fundamental today for recovery is that this doctor worked with somewhere between 40 and 50,000 alcoholics and drug addicts in the early part of the 1900s, and he's the doctor credited with figuring out that alcoholism was an actual illness. Okay, so this is why what he had to say was so important. So we're going to jump in at the top of the first paragraph. Okay, here we go. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. So, quick explanation. I'm going to translate this and then I'm going to let David explain it in some depth. So, what the doctor is saying is that for a chronic alcoholic, when they put alcohol in their body, they have an allergic reaction to alcohol. Right? And that allergic reaction, that abnormal reaction, is that the real alcoholic breaks out in craving. And then the second part that I read says the phenomenon of craving limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. What this means is that only real alcoholics have this allergic reaction and end up breaking out in craving.
Yeah, I think it's so important for us to understand the language that the doctor's sharing with us here too. That David pointed out that this is an allergy, so this is an abnormal reaction. When I have an abnormal reaction to something, if I have a normal reaction to peanuts and I eat peanut butter, I'm going to have an abnormal reaction. My throat's going to close up. When it comes to alcohol, I'm a recovered alcoholic, and we'll get into the ED part of recovered at some other time in this experience of the steps, but not today necessarily. But as a recovered alcoholic, I understand that I have an abnormal reaction to to a drink, meaning that my throat opens up even wider. Like once I set out to have one or two, I thought I changed my mind, and I ended up having 22. That is not what happened. I did not change my mind. I broke out in what the doctor says in the rest of that sentence, that I had a phenomenon of craving. So let's be real clear on the phenomenon. Phenomenon means that it can be observed, but it cannot be explained. Well, we can explain it. We don't have time to go into it. Listen to Joe and Charlie. They do a way better job than I could do anyways in explaining what a phenomenon is and the biology of the whole thing. But this craving is so important that I understand what craving really means. Because a lot of times I've been in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous, and someone comes in early morning meeting, 10 a.m., and they say, I've been craving alcohol all morning. Well, not if you didn't drink, you did not. You're having an obsession, which we will get to. And I really think that this craving, this part of this thing here, and earlier on in XXX, the doctor's gonna talk about here that abstinence is the solution for this. But we'll address that as we get to the obsession of the mind later in the page. So we have this phenomenon of craving. I break out in craving once I start. I want to have two, and I have 22, and this happens to me most of the time, and is limited to this class. And remember, I circle the word never here. Never occurs in the average temperate drinker. How many of us drank and drugged with a lot of people in our past, and they one day got married, had children, got promoted at work, got a different job, and they made a decision that they're going to go home and not stop at the bar, or they're going to go to the bar and have two and actually go home. So it never happens to them. It will always happen to me.
So then as this paragraph continues, this is a tactic we picked up from a speaker who's passed away, but we really love him. Some of you probably listened to him speak. His name was Mark Houston. When you're reading this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, or we refer to it as the big books, keep in mind, guys, this is a textbook intended to be read and studied. This is not a novel that I read one time and then say, "Oh, you dig this," and then I give it to Andy to read. Right? It's over and over. It should be a falling apart like this one is. Right? So what do you do with the textbook to help with comprehension and retention? Well, one of the tactics that Mark talked about was anytime there's statements about the alcoholic or about the alcoholic illness, turn those statements into questions so that I can consider them. Okay. And what does it mean to consider a question? It means I don't answer right away. It's like I sort of let it, sink in a little and formulate what my answer is. So I'm going to read this as statements and then we'll turn them into questions and talk about them. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So let's turn this into questions. As an allergic type, can I safely use alcohol in any form?
So that means once I put alcohol in my body, can I control the amount I drink? That is the question I need to ask myself. When I put alcohol in my body or any other mind altering substance, can I control the amount I drink? Can I actually say I'm going to have to and have to every single time? And my answer is absolutely not.
Once having okay, so once I've broken out in craving, once I've started drinking, can I stop abruptly? Right? Can I set out to have two and not end up having 22? Hmm? How about this? Have I lost my self-confidence around my drinking? Which is to say, I just want to have a couple of drinks. But after I have that first drink, I break out in craving and I always drink more than I want to drink. How confident do I feel the next time I belly up in the bar? In my experience, not so much. When the boss says to me, "David, it's Christmas party, you can't get drunk like you did last year. It was really embarrassing. You were way out of line." What's my confidence level that I'm going to be able to control my drinking? Not so hot. How about how about this next question? When it comes to stopping drinking abruptly, have I lost my reliance upon things human?
So let's put this into real time emotions and feelings here. I mean, I'm a father of 5 daughters and 3 grandchildren. Now, none of the grandchildren were born when I got sober, and my kids were very young. I was very blessed to get sober at very early ages. Now they're all adults. But I didn't want to get drunk and ruin every experience that they had, not show up for 2 or 3 days. And I said to myself that I'm not going to drink today because it's my daughter's first birthday and we have family coming over. Yet I picked up a drink, and what happened to me? I broke out in craving. So human power, reliance on human power wasn't sufficient enough for me to stop drinking. And one example that I give here, because I got a chance to work with a lot of women in Alcoholics Anonymous over the years too, is the love that they have for their children. Like, I really love my children, but my wife super loves her children. Like, really, really, like, there's a level of love that I've never even experienced, because I know it. I see my wife having this experience with my daughters, even in their adulthood today. But I see women come out of the joint. I see women come out of detoxes and rehabs, and they say, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a picture of those little babies on my refrigerator, and I'm not drinking on their behalf, no matter what." No matter what. And do they mean it? Could they take a polygraph and pass it? You bet they could. But if they're real alcoholics, if they break out in craving once they start, they're not going to be able to pull that off. They're not going. No human reliance.
Last question from these statements. Are my problems piling up on me and becoming astonishingly difficult to solve?
So think this is where when David and I go to treatment centers, which we go quite often, and carry this same message that we give, we break that, we do the whole first step at a treatment center. We don't really go any farther than that, because as David started us out, if I don't have a good foundation and I'm building a house isn't going to be built, and if it does, it's not going to stand very long. So I got to have a very strong foundation. First, I got to find out what the problem is, and this is 10% of the problem. Is, for me, anyways. There's no evidence for me to back that up, but other than the fact is, when I put drink in my body, do I have any power, choice, or control? And it's talking about here, and we get heads nodding. Are your problems piling up on you and becoming astonishingly difficult for you to solve? And this is where they start. Yeah, mama hates me. Just lost my job. I'm going to be in front of the judge next week. I'm going to be sentenced this time. And I have never, ever met a stupid alcoholic drug addict my whole life, ever. But I've met some dumb ones before. I've met some real dumb ones. And I'm not going to give any shares about that today, but I'm just saying we have got to put ourselves in positions that we get out of that normal people could never get out of. But man, are my problems piling up on me. And now they're becoming to a point where they're impossible to solve. And my solution is take a drink, and the drink takes me.
Em, if you have any definitions from that first paragraph, throw them in the chat, please. So this whole paragraph is one paragraph. Is like the greatest hits of the physical powerlessness. This is everything we really need to know that the doctor is explaining. He said, if you're a real alcoholic, and by the way, that term real alcoholic is not something that we're making up. It's used in the book. The real alcoholic is someone who's defined as being powerless physically and mentally, and that's also suffering from a spiritual illness, right? So that's why we're using this particular term. So what this is saying, if you're a real alcoholic, if I'm a real alcoholic, I'm powerless over alcohol. When I put alcohol in my body, I'm going to break out in craving, and I'm going to drink until I run out, pass out, get thrown out, one of those outs, right? And it only happens to real alcoholics like me. And so David said, what's the solution here, guys? The rhetorical question, because we're going to tell you what the answer is, why don't I just not drink? If I put alcohol in my body and break out in craving, why don't I just not drink? Right? Anybody here ever try to just not drink? Yeah.
Mm.
And then drank again, right? Yeah, I know it's 100%. We all tried to just not drink. Okay. So why do I pick up another drink? Go down to the bottom of the page. Same thing. We're still on Roman numeral 28, but now we're in the bottom paragraph. This is where the doctor is going to discuss our mental powerlessness or our mental obsession or mental compulsion, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Here's what the doctor says about why we always pick up another drink. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol.
So men and women drink essentially because they like the effect. I like. Does anyone really drink for the taste? Come on. I mean, I used to make the ugliest faces when I took a shot of whiskey or drank vodka straight or gin or whatever I was more of a clear drinker than I was the brown stuff. That's just me, but it's like, so men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. My wife is not an alcoholic. She can have a drink. And matter of fact, she does something that which I don't even relate to whatsoever. And so she can have a drink, put it down, because she likes the effect that it produces, meaning that she just likes to take the edge off. Just relax a little bit while she's making dinner at night. And then she puts the drink on the counter and then she walks away. And then she goes, if anyone see my drink, I'm like, yeah, it's right over there. Like, she lost sight of her drink. Has anyone else ever lost sight of their drink or had any, like, even arm's length away from another drink? Not me. I am one, dude. I'm having that drink, but the drink for the effect produced, and she takes it just to take the edge off. And sometimes she does like something absolutely crazy. She sometimes doesn't even finish her drink, and she pours the rest of the wine back in the bottle. Like, who does that? No one does that. Or she'll have a drink. And you ever been out with people to drink and they get a mixed drink with ice in it, and the ice starts melting and they starts ruining the whole freaking drink? Like, dude, drink that drink real quick, okay? Come on, drink it. You're ruining the drink. It's like they drink for the effect produced. I drink also for the effect produced.
So the effect produced, right? Want to take the edge off. Maybe I want a little nerve to get up on the dance floor. I want to get, go talk to that cute boy or girl. Maybe in a bad mood. I want some beer muscles. I want to go start a fight. Whatever it is, all people drink for the effect produced. But this next sentence, right, is going to talk about the real alcoholic again. the sensation or the effect produced is so elusive. You guys know what elusive means? It's like it's slippery, it's always out of reach, can't quite grab it or control it. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, it means bad stuff happens. I admit bad stuff happens when I drink. They cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. And this, guys, is what we refer to as alcoholic insanity. Later in step 2, we talk about the restoration of sanity. That's exactly what this is talking about. This says, I want to have a couple of drinks to take the edge off. But that sensation, that effect produced that I want eludes me. I can't get it because I don't stop at 2 drinks, which is all I wanted to get the effect. I don't have 2, I have 3, and then I have 10, and then I have 22. So I get annihilated, right? And then, so here's a story I always tell, and it's I always say, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. So there's some dramatic effect here, but it's all pulled from some life experiences, right? So it's the end of a hard week and it's Friday afternoon, and I call my girlfriend on the phone and I say, hey, I'm going to go with my coworkers to happy hour at 6 o'clock. I'm going to have a couple of drinks. I'll be home at 8 o'clock. If you want to make dinner, we'll have dinner together and watch a movie. And she says, great, see you at 8 o'clock at night. So I go to the bar at 6 o'clock and I order my first drink. And by 6:01, what's happened? I broke out in craving. I put the alcohol in my body and I have my abnormal allergic reaction. Anybody want to guess if I made it home by 8 o'clock? No, I did not. You know what happened by 8 o'clock? I'm sure I was probably 8 drinks in. I was absolutely wasted. At some point during the night, I touch a woman inappropriately. Her boyfriend takes issue with that, punches me in the face, and eventually the bouncers throw me out, right? Opening the exit door with my skull. And I make it home, 2 in the morning, 6 hours late, where I'm locked out of the apartment and I got to sleep it off in the hallway. Right. So then the next day I come to, and my buddy Glenn calls me and he's like, "Oh, rough one last night, huh?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I'm in so much trouble with the old lady. I'm just gonna better just stay home." And Glenn's like, "No, no, no, no. Let's go Saturday night. Hair of the dog that bit you. We'll just go out, 2 drinks. We won't call the dealer. I got your back. You don't have to worry about it." And in that moment on Saturday afternoon, when Glenn says we're only going to have 2 drinks and he's going to make sure I only have 2 drinks, do I believe in the moment? Can I tell the truth from the false? No, I cannot. What's the truth? The truth is I'm going to be off to the races. I'm going to have another injurious night. The false is Glenn's right. I am going to only have 2 drinks tonight. And David brought this up. You put me on a lie detector. I say my plan is to have 2 drinks tonight. I'd pass with flying colors. I truly believe I'm going to have 2 drinks at night. I cannot differentiate the true from the false.
So where are we at now in the first step? David explained that there's 2 parts to the powerlessness in step 1. So we already described the craving, what happens to our body. Once I put alcohol or drugs in my body, I break out in this abnormal reaction. I have an allergic reaction to alcohol. We are now in the obsession, the greater part of this illness of the mind. So without my permission, without my consent, because David's story describes that perfectly for me. Without my permission, without my consent, I go out and have those 2 drinks. I think I set out to have, but I still have 22 drinks. So the curtain has fallen between me and reality.
Moving on. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. I didn't know how to live any other way except to have experiences like that. I mean, I knew people who didn't drink, or I knew people that, just drank a little, but I didn't think it was possible for me. This was the only life I ever knew, right? So David just did that nice recap for us, the physical, right? That abnormal reaction, breaking down craving. And now we're talking about the mental obsession. And by the way, again, we're gonna be broken records about this. You're going to see how easy it is to understand and take these steps, not just for yourselves. Yes, if you've never formally taken the steps, now's your time. But more importantly, to get through these steps and then to turn around and take other people through the steps. So that one paragraph at the top of the page, that's all David and I go through when we're taking new people through the steps to talk about the physical powerlessness. And the only thing we really talk about in the mental powerlessness is what we just read right there. Now I want to start to get into the unmanageability, the part after the dash. Because listen, the drinking, major problem for me. But what I'm really going to learn, and what this book does so masterfully describes, is I got a problem even bigger than my drinking. It's my unmanageability. It's my spiritual malady. This is what the doctor's going to go on to describe it here. He's going to illustrate this. Here's what he says. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. Let's make sure we understand some of the words that are being used here. You know what restless is? Is like, can't sit still, like uncomfortable. You know what irritable means? It's like I'm always on the verge of angry. I'm agitated. And discontented means unhappy. So I am uncomfortable, angry, and unhappy unless what? Unless I get the sense of ease and comfort. I don't even get real ease and comfort. And David and I came to this conclusion a few years ago studying together. It says the sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. The conclusion we came to is actually the sense of ease and comfort is before I start drinking. It's when I'm standing in line at the store with the bottle, or the first drink's being pushed across the bar, or I just got back from the dealer and I got my little baggie and I haven't got into it yet. Because as soon as I start drinking or drugging, there is no ease and comfort. I'm all downhill. Right? And then this last part, drinks that they see others taking with impunity. Impunity means without punishment. These are those friends, those coworkers that we go out drinking with. They made it home by 8 o'clock to their boyfriends and girlfriends and wives and husbands while we couldn't shut it off.
Yeah, I just want to iterate a little bit. Irritable. What does the irritable mean? Well, it means like you irritate me. Like the way the sound of your voice, what the kids are doing to each other, everything irritable me. And right in the back of my mind is the ease and comfort, the sense of that 80 proof. I know exactly what's in that bottle, but there's nowhere for the alcoholic like me to hide inside that bottle. But man, I just know that's still my solution. So what I do really have here is knowing that I'm going to break out in craving. I have a sobriety problem. I have an abstinence problem. I have no power, no choice, no control whether or not I pick up a drink. And this is what Dave is talking about here. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, we could break this down. I'll do it as quickly as I can, and I'll reemphasize it, and I'll explain it at a later time. But in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the first step is the first 8 pages of this doctor's opinion that we're in right here, up to page 23. That is describing in Bill Wilson's terms and the doctor's terms what powerless means as far as in my body, when I put alcohol in my body. And then page 23 through 43 is talking about the mind, the greater part of this illness, the obsession of the mind without my permission, without my consent. And then on page 44, 45, page 52, page 60, 61, and 62. I know I'm going a little bit fast. When we get to those steps, I'll slow it down and point it out to you. But also, that part is talking about the unmanageability. So I have a drink problem. That's a problem. What I really have is an unmanageability problem. Did anyone explain that to you when you first came in Alcoholics Anonymous? My answer to that is no. I just thought I had a drink problem. And I thought if I could just stop or control my drinking, everything would be okay. But again, from the great Mark Houston, I have no power, no choice, no control. Coming up on 26 years of sobriety, I still have no power, no choice, no control.
So continuing on in the top of Roman numeral 29, after they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, because we've got this mental powerlessness, and the phenomenon of craving develops because we got this physical powerlessness, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, which is like a binge, a run, a drunkenness, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. Anybody ever make a firm resolution not to drink again? Anybody ever do it 10,000 times? Yeah. Anybody break that resolution 10,001 times? Yeah, right. My word about stopping drinking and drugging is of zero value. All right? This is repeated over and over. And pay attention now, guys, unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. So think about that. What this doctor said is if you got the physical powerlessness and the mental powerlessness and you're spiritually ill, unless you have an entire psychic change, chances are you're not going to recover. So what does that mean? So it's saying, it doesn't say unless this person gets a handle on their drinking. No, no. It says I need to have an entire psychic change. And that's going to take care, and we'll get into this more later. That's going to take care of the drinking issue. But what the heck does an entire psychic change mean? Well, it means a change of the psyche. Okay, well, what's the psyche? Right? Without getting into psychology, here's the easiest way to think about it, guys. It's the figurative stuff that's inside of me. It starts just under my skull, top of my skull, and it goes down to just above the soles of my feet. It's what's in my head, what's in my heart, and what's in my gut. My thinker, my feeler, and my reactor. Okay? So it's saying all that stuff needs to change, or else there's very little hope more recovery. But if you turn that around, guys, what it says is, therefore, if I do have an entire psychic change, there's going to be great hope of my recovery. This is the promise of the 12th step. Okay. Now, what we want to do before, because step one's a bummer, right? Because you learn your life is all screwed up, you got no power, but we don't like to end on that. So what we're going to do is show you what it's going to be like to have a spiritual awakening. But before we do that, we got to go deeper into the spiritual malady, into the unmanageability. Okay. So let's jump to page 27. Excuse me, 52.
52.
Yeah, thank you. 27 will be after that. 52. I was getting excited thinking about 27.
I know you are.
So normal 52, no more Roman numerals. Second paragraph. This is not the only description of what it looks like to have an unmanageable life or to be spiritually ill, but I think you will find it is an excellent description, characterization. Okay, so second paragraph from 52 starts with the second sentence. We call these the bedevilments. Again, we're going to do statements, then turn them into questions and talk about them. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. So again, we call these the bedevilments. It's illustrative of what it looks like to have unmanageability in my life or to be spiritually ill. So let's turn these into questions. So again, you're welcome to nod or enthusiastically, or you're welcome to just consider, right? Am I having trouble with personal relationships? Or maybe you're fully recovered. Ask yourself, when you came into recovery, were you having trouble with personal relationships? Go ahead,
Oh,
Dave.
yeah. So, yeah, David talking about what he said earlier on in our study here today is consider these things. Don't answer the question right away. We all went to school at some point in time. Some of us went farther in education, some of us dropped out early. Doesn't really matter, but we've had this experience. When the teacher asks a question, first hand up answers the question, and then we move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. This is life saving. Like, I really better consider this right now, because Bill's going to give us even a stronger statement on page 30 of the big book. When we're talking about powerlessness, sometimes that word powerlessness that we're talking on page 59 of the book about we're powerless over alcohol, that gets watered down a little bit. And other people take it way out of context, which I won't go into. But on page 30, Bill says that we must concede our innermost self that we're a real alcoholic. So we're trying in this study to understand if I'm a real alcoholic. And what is a real alcoholic? That means that this part of the step, this is the greater part of this illness here that David talked about, this unmanageability. Am I having trouble with personal relationships? And when we're in a treatment center, when we're at a podium, when we're doing the study live or on Zoom, people's heads are nodding, because I have never considered that this is part of my illness. This is a greater part of my illness. This is what triggers a relapse or a resume, let's call it, because it's really not a relapse. It's a resume. If I had a spiritual experience, I can have permanent sobriety. I have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. But here's the quickest question to consider, because this is what we're doing. We're taking statements, we're turning them into questions. Am I having trouble with personal relationships? And the last thing I'll say about that is this is a good checkpoint at any time in my sobriety. If I'm having problems with my employers, my employees, my wife, anyone, go back and see where you're at in the bedevilments, because definition that I've heard about this is as though being controlled by devils.
Next question. Can I control my emotional nature? Go ahead, take that one too, David.
So Anyone here ever get out off in traffic? Like someone cuts you off and then you tailgate them for like 15 miles and they pull in their driveway and you get right behind them. I mean, didn't you have to get to work or get home? And I mean, that is not controlling my emotional nature. Anyone go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in early sobriety and go home and punch a hole in the drywall still? Well, maybe you didn't, but I did. Maybe my kids were pulling each other's hair when they were little and everything. I flip out. These are things I can't control my emotional nature. But what I got to understand here, and I'll get to this in a second here, these emotional natures that we're talking about must change for me. And I don't have the power to do that on my own.
Am I a prey to misery and depression? So I'll just say, guys, if you were anything like me towards the end, before I got into recovery, I was so miserable. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd open my eyes, and I would say, not again. Like, not again, what? Like, not again, anything, not again, everything. Like, I just had no interest in life. I'd be like, I guess I'll get up and take a shower and go to work because it was like, I don't know, it was just something to occupy myself. But I felt so overwhelmed with misery. It was like I had 5 big boiling pots of misery, but I only had a 4 burner stove. So no matter how I tried to rearrange all the misery that I felt, I couldn't handle it. It always overwhelmed me. Can I make a living? Go ahead, David.
So what does that look like? So David and I come to the conclusion that means like being hired and actually going to work 5 days a week. And if your job is 9 to 5, showing up on time and leaving on time. Like that was a new rhythm of things for me to do in my life. Like I didn't even go to work 5 days a week. And I was amazed when I got sober and I started going to work 5 days a week. What I found out is everybody else goes to work 5 days a week. Who knew that? I did not. You got to go to work every day to find out that everyone else goes to work. And when I started going to work every single day, it's like that meant I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to steal time, meaning that I'm going to take smoke breaks whenever I feel like it. I'm going to go hide in the bathroom. We're going to go get lost. Like I'm actually hired to do the job that my employer asked me to do, and I'm going to do to the best of my ability. That is making a living. And then seeing where God's going to take me the rest of my life. That is making a living for me and David.
Mm. How about this? Do I have a feeling of uselessness? Take that one too, man.
Yeah, well, think about that, guys. I never felt used. Being a father of 5 daughters, and no one can count on me for anything. Having a job and no one giving me any responsibility at work. I'm just like a number to them in my head. You know what I found out? I actually found out in sobriety and having had a spiritual experience that probably and most likely the key to life is feeling useful. Feeling useful, like actually working on being an agent of God and working on God's behalf. That makes me feel useful. Carrying this message, being a father. There's demonstrations in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I learned these things from. I didn't come up on this on my own power. I did not. God kept putting people in my life to demonstrate to me and how to show up as a father, how to be at my sobriety station at their softball games and their volleyball games and all these other parts of my life, and how to be an employee and how to be respectful to other people and not get carried away by if someone cuts me off in traffic. Who cares?
Next question. Am I full of fear? Am I full of fear? Am I full of fear? Not am I sometimes scared? Not am I a little timid at times? Am I full of fear? Here's examples, right? Real examples so you see what it means in full of fear. So, right, so the girlfriend I mentioned before, she says, David, we've been dating for a few years now exclusively. Don't you think it's time that you bought me a ring and we got engaged? I'm like, what's my first reaction? Fear. Fear of what? Fear of commitment. Oh, this woman's trying to lock me down for the rest of my life. I'm not going to be a free man anymore. That's a fear response, right? What's my second response? Wait a minute. If I don't marry this woman, I'm going to be alone the rest of my life. She puts up with all my stuff. She loves me even though I don't even love myself. I go right from the fear of commitment right to the fear of being alone. Full of fear. I always say, consider, I don't know, find 9 more outcomes to that scenario in the unrecovered state. And I challenge you to find an outcome that's not fear-based, right? Or work. They say, David, well, you haven't been screwing up as much lately. We're going to give you promotion and make you a manager. We're going to give you the keys to the place. What's my first reaction? Oh my God, more responsibility. Now I really can't screw up. Now I really have to be here every day and I better stop stealing money out of the drawer. Fear. But then what's my next response? Wait a minute. If I don't take this job, if I turn it down, I'm never going to make any money. I'm never going to make a living or have a career. And I sure as hell won't be able to afford that ring for my girlfriend. Fear, 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 enveloped in fear, full of fear, guys. Next question. This is the easiest one by this point in reading the bedevilments. Am I unhappy? When everybody's been doing this for the first 6, I already know what the answer is. No, you weren't happy any more than I was happy. Now, listen, this is not totally black and white. Did I have moments of happiness? Did I have moments of joy unrecovered? Yes, of course I did. But 98% of the time, what I characterize how I was going through life is happy. I could not. I could not.
But when we talk, so we're talking about happy. So I had a tumultuous upbringing in my life. Some of it worse than others. Some of them not as bad as some of you. So that look for the similarities, not the differences, when you hear people speak. And I'm just telling you here that that is what defined me. And I brought that into my relationship with my wife, even though at the beginning I'm a master of disguise, and I had her believe that I was this other personality until the reality kicked in. Is like I was always unhappy. I was waiting for her to please me in some shape or form, like waiting for her to become my mother and give me the things that my mom was incapable of giving in my life. And because of that, I was unhappy perpetually. My wife does not need to do anything for me to be happy. This book here is about the treasure map to the treasure of having a relationship with power, a power, God of my own understanding. And when I have that, you're darn right. This is how I am all the time now. I am excited about life in general. And what I'll say about that is this: we are people that get to live 2 lives in one. You know, that alcoholic life that we're used to, that we only knew. And now this life of sobriety today, where I have a relationship with power today, infinite power today, my life, I am content, more than content. I am happy. And it's not dependent upon another human being.
Last question. Can I seem to be of real help to other people? And you know what real help means, guys? It means giving with absolutely no thought about what I'm getting out of it. I just say yes because I want to say yes because I want to be helpful. I'm not taking a credit against something in the future. So here's the question. I'm going to pose it, consider it briefly, and then David will explain the answer. What do all 8 of these bedevilments have in common?
So consider what we're at. First of all, how am I doing on my own power with these things? And these things here is alcoholism. This is alcoholism, guys. Untreated alcoholism we're describing here, or the spiritual malady. They all mean the same thing. It had anything to do with the color of my skin, my sexual orientation, the way my mom and dad hugged me or did not hug me, the kind of shoes or pants that I had on. No, those are all external things. What this is describing to me is all internal. These are all internal issues, all internal realities of my life. And on my own power, I can't remove that here. So, what are we going to have to do? David's going to introduce us to what that looks like on page 27 now.
So I just want to point out here, in about 40 minutes, we just took you guys through the physical powerlessness, the mental powerlessness, and the spiritual malady, right? With some colorful stories and anecdotes. You can do it too. Follow the outline, do it in your own words, find your own style, communicate as you see fit. But the idea is, this guy's is taking a month per step stuff. This is how people die. We get through the first 3 steps in 3 hours. Moving on, right? So yeah, so we said it's not doesn't feel great to come out of step 1 to find out I'm powerless and my life is unmanageable. I'm spiritually ill. So what's it going to look like to get well? What's the promise of the 12th step? We'll get to step 12 in another 11 weeks, but we got to give you a little sneak preview. We got to show you the hope here. So as David said, we're going to go backwards in the book to page 27. And while you guys are getting there, I'll set it up. This is a story with another doctor, not Dr. Silkworth from the beginning, but this is a doctor, a very famous psychiatrist and psychoanalyst whose name was Carl Jung. If you've not heard of Jung, again, some of you older folks like me, you probably heard of him in school. He was a disciple of Sigmund Freud. Everybody's heard of Sigmund Freud, even if you don't not familiar with him. Freud was like basically the godfather of psychiatry and psychoanalysis, and Jung was one of his main disciples. What's important about the story and why I give a little historical context is that Freud, as a psychoanalyst and psychiatrist, he believed troubled people could always be helped through sort of pharmacology, medicine, and like talk therapy, right? Traditional analysis, laying on the couch and talking about all those tough things from our childhood, like David talked about. But Jung had a different belief system. He believed that some challenges that people face could be resolved with a spiritual experience. And that's what he talks about here on page 22, 26 and 27. And we're going to pick up the story in 27. And what the story is that Carl Jung was treating this desperate, terrible American businessman. His name was Roland Hazard. And Roland was wealthy enough and also alcoholic enough that he was able to leave the United States. This is in the 1920s, and go to Switzerland and be in the care of Dr. Jung for a long, long time. And he got there and under Dr. Jung's care, they did all sorts of treatment and stuff. And after a long time, he believed he was cured, and so Dr. Jung thought Roland was cured too. So Dr. Jung said, "God bless. Go back to America. Have an amazing life." And Roland said, "Yes, thank you, doctor. I will." And guess what happened within days after Roland left Dr. Jung's care? He drank. He drank, guys. He was working with arguably the most brilliant psychiatrist on the planet at the time. So he goes back to Dr. Jung, Roland does, and he asks him, "Why can I not stop drinking?" Right? Oh, the book flipped to the wrong page. Okay, so second paragraph. This is what the doctor said. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you." Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. Guys, imagine if you went to the doctor or you went to a treatment center and you told them your drinking and drug history, and they're like, "Oof, I've never heard anybody with a story like that get recovered." Or God forbid, think about this. Anybody? We always ask this question too. Anybody here ever lost somebody to alcohol or drugs? Right? Family, friends? Yeah, there's always, most of us have. Right? This is a life or death illness. What if you had another life or death illness? What if, God forbid, you had cancer and you went to like the chief of oncology at the most brilliant hospital in downtown London, and he looked at you and your cancer results and he said, "Well, I've never seen anybody with cancer like yours get better." How would you feel? Death sentence, right? That is what Dr. Jung gave to Roland. So Roland, he said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times." So he's saying, yeah, there is exceptions where alcoholics really bad don't die. Here and there, once in a while. Remember, this is the 1920s. This is before AA existed, which is the original 12-step fellowship. There was no surefire way for alcoholics and addicts of substances or process addictions like us, right? There was no way that guaranteed people get better. Now we have it. It's called 12-step recovery. It's called 3 legacies, right? We can do this, but back then it was here and there once in a while. Alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. Vital meaning life-saving or life-sustaining. Spiritual meaning bigger than human. And an experience is an event. So here and there, once in a while, alcoholics would have had what are called life-saving, greater than human events. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. David talked a little bit about phenomena before. The way I always think about it is, what's a phenomenon? It's like, right? It's kind of mysterious. It can't be given. It can't be caused. It can't be measured. The doctor's saying, you need to have this phenomena, but by the way, I can't give it to you. You just need to get to God, is basically what he's saying. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Here's the key, guys. This is what the spiritual awakening, the spiritual experience, the entire psychic change. We use these expressions to mean the same thing, technically a little different, but close enough to mean the same thing. This is the promise of the 12th step. That ideas, the stuff that's up here in my crazy head, emotions, right? The things that are here in my blackened heart, and attitudes, right? Those beliefs that prejudices that are festering in my belly, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men. These are the ideas, emotions, and attitudes that are driving me through life. These things are suddenly cast to one side. And don't even worry about suddenly, because for most of us, it happens gradually. But they get cast to one side. And a completely new set of conceptions and motives, new ideas, new emotions, new attitudes, completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. So what he's saying, guys, is that my problem, when I came in, I was 30, 31 years old. I had 30, 31 years of problem thoughts, problem feelings, and problem beliefs that were driving me to be miserable and all those other bedevilments. And hence I drank and drugged like I wanted to kill myself. And I'll say this before I let David take over for a minute here. I will tell you, this is without hyperbole. In the 21 plus years I've been around clean and sober in recovery, I have never seen one person in any of the fellowships I attend, I've never seen anyone fail to have this kind of spiritual experience if, huge if, two-letter word, massive word, they take all the steps and live this design for living thoroughly and honestly. I've seen many people fail, not have this spiritual experience because they cut corners. They couldn't be totally honest. But this thing works. We have 100% success when we do all the work with thorough and honest.
Yeah, so David, in that first paragraph of the last sentence, it says, "Our friend felt as though the gates of hell closed in on him with a clang." So that description that Carl Jung is giving us there is a description of hopelessness. And I pray today that you, if you're new, that you feel hopeless. Because if you're not, you're probably not going to concede your innermost self, and you may or may not. But to do the rest of this work and without that concession to my innermost self, I am not going to do this work. And if I can see the hopelessness in this, that I have no power, no choice, no control, then the solution that David just read to us, that Carl Jung gave us in the description, the definition that I use for vital, is the continued existence of something. If I'm going to continue to exist, live on this planet, I am going to die if I pick up a drink again. I know I am, and that does not scare me into sobriety. I'm just telling you, it keeps me here. But talking about what these things look like, my emotions are my ideas. So that means that my ideas, my thinking, my radical thinking is going to change. I have to have radical thinking change. My emotions, which are my feelings, and my attitude, which are my beliefs. What is that telling me? That no human power can produce this in me. No meeting, no sponsors. This is called step work here. This is about a relationship with God. And the last thing I'll ask is something to consider here. How am I doing with my ideas, my emotions, my attitudes on my own power? So if I am hopeless and I do this work, my feelings will not be driving me around any longer. They'll just be God giving feelings, and they will not own me.
There's one more paragraph that we're going to cover that's not in the outline. We'll put an updated outline up towards the end of the study in a few weeks. But we always end with this. But again, I want to recap where we're at. We're less than an hour in. We talked about the physical powerlessness. We talked about the mental powerlessness. We talked about the spiritual experience. And now we're given the glimpse of how great we're going to think and feel and react when we achieve the promise of the 12th step, which we all can. This is how quickly and easy it is to help somebody understand these things. And sometimes some people a little thick in the head. Yeah, for sure. Although I'll tell you this, I've never met anybody too stupid to go through the work with me. I have met people too smart, right? Sometimes I come off like a smart guy, and so I got buddies in recovery. They're like, "Oh, you should talk to David, have him sponsor you. He's a real smart guy like you." I don't like the smart guys. Give me the dummy. The dummies just come in and they want to like get into the trench. Too smart, there's too many problems, right? So if you think you're too smart, you ain't. Dumb yourself down and be in the trenches with the rest of us, right? Get with the big, ugly, bald guys like me and Jim, right? So now that you understand the powerlessness, physical and mental, and the spiritual malady, and we gave you the glimpse of what it's going to look like to have a vital spiritual experience, go to the bottom, page 25, bottom paragraph, because Now that you have comprehension, standing at the turning point. I'm standing at the turning point. Bottom of page 25, and this is my favorite. So page 27 is my favorite page in the book, but this paragraph is my favorite paragraph in the book. It's the paragraph that I first related to so strongly it made me fall in love with the book. Find your favorite page or paragraph, and you will fall in love and want to study this all the time, like David and I do. So at the bottom of 25, it says, if you're as seriously alcoholic as we were, you're physically powerless, mentally powerless, you're spiritually ill. So if so, we believe there's no middle of the road solution. Guys, ever heard of any middle of the road solutions? You guys been to 12? Well, I'm not saying effective ones. I'm just saying, have you heard things like, just don't drink and go to meetings. Yeah, just put the plug in the jar. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Listen, if that's all it took, we wouldn't have a program recovery because I would just put the plug in the jug and I'd stop drinking. That is not how it works for a real alcoholic, right? Middle of the road doesn't work.
And middle of the road solutions. So a lot of times we'll hear those things in meetings, like go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I'm just going to tell you that it doesn't say that in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. But matter of fact, they went to one meeting a week. And what did they do the other 6 days of the week? They worked with the suffering alcoholic and drug addict. They went for coffee. They went for tea. They spent time with them in the trenches and carried this message, not my message. You know what my message looks like? A little of the 12 and 12, a little bit of the big book, and a whole lot of my opinion. You know what that gets you? They get you dead. They get you really dead. But if I follow this map right here, you can have permanent sobriety. Not because of me. I'm just the vessel. That's all I am. This is about a relationship with power. This is guaranteed. David said it umpteen times here today that this is about relationship with power. And again, you will have a relationship with human powers. You'll be able to affect other people's life in a positive way. But this is about the ultimate power, a loving God as me understand him.
We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. Consider, am I in a position where life is becoming impossible? And if we had passed into the region from which there's no return to human aid, have I passed into the region past from which there's no return to human aid? Consider, if yes to both, we had but two alternatives. One, go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. So what does that mean? It means I'm just going to keep on trudging with blinders on to the reality of my miserable, intolerable life best I can, which probably isn't going to be that good. Maybe if I'm lucky, I have an alcoholic death. Otherwise, I'm going to live miserable and alcoholic and drug addicted for decades, which sounds like a fate worse than death, the way I remember things. So that's alternative one. Alternative two, and the other, to accept spiritual help. So again, 21 years in, guys, I always chuckle a little bit, at least inwardly, when I read this, because I'm like, well, of course, I'll take the spiritual help. But I've been doing this consistently and aggressively for 21 years. This is not an easy decision when somebody comes into recovery. And as we're taking a newcomer through the steps for the first time, we cannot forget this. They're not recovered like you are. They don't know how great you feel in your head, your heart, and your gut. You need to remember, as I need to remember, what it was like to be sitting in the chair for that first meeting in a church basement or right here on Zoom. Remember, as I remembered, I was very comfortable with the pain. The devil I knew well. The pain was very predictable. It was way scarier to be like, what? I'm going to hang out with all you weirdos? And there's these steps and God, and I got to call another man, my sponsor. I'm like, I'm a grown man. I got to be accountable to somebody else. It was crazy, guys. It was a difficult decision to make. But there's only two ways this goes.
Yeah, so bottom of the hour here, and briefly, I just want to say, so there's two alternatives. This was my bottom. This was my bottom. My bottom was a feeling, and I'll quickly say this. I ended up on a psych ward. I got sober November, or I stopped drinking on November 13th, 1999, and I ended up in a psych ward, locked up for a number of days, detox. And my third day, I was sitting in treatment with a bunch of other patients, none of them alcoholic and drug addicts, and I hadn't said a word in 3 days. I am just out of my mind, like sad and pissed off and lonely as can be. And the counselor asked me to speak, and she said, and I said, I'll speak. I hate my wife because my wife actually called the police on me that last time I drank and drugged. And a patient looked right at me and she said to me, she goes, David, if you blame your wife for making that phone call, you'll never get sober. So what did that mean? That is a moment of clarity. That means to me that God froze the liar inside of me just long enough for me to see the truth. And I went to the payphone and I humbled myself enough to call someone in Alcoholics Anonymous and said, I need help. I didn't know that was spiritual help, but I needed help. My life has never been the same ever again because I follow directions today. I follow them to the best of my ability. And you know what they do? These steps are designed in a way that God will give you the ability to follow these steps as they are linked together. I can't pull that off of my own power, too. Life is amazing, guys. I'm just saying.
So 2 things before we conclude here. So that's step 1, guys. It's the easiest pie to get through. I know some people love having some homework as we go through a workshop like this. So step 1, homework. We were jumping around the book, right? This is the way that we deliver step 1. If you want a comprehensive experience, start with the title page and read up through page 43 prior to next week. Okay? Because we're going to be picking up next week starting on page 44 for step 2. So that's homework. You guys are up for it. Okay. And then I'm going to stop the recording, but if anybody has questions, we will open up for Q&A.